Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of DogSpot Live series. My name is Srishti Sharma, and I am the founder of Petarchy. I'm also a certified trainer. So, Petarchy is mainly about pet furniture, and it focuses on training-based dog products and dog equipment. And today, for the live session, we have with us Shivani Singh. She is also a certified canine trainer, and she's been into the industry from past almost 3 to 3.5 years now professionally. And I will basically hand it over to Shivani so that she can give her introduction and let us all know about how her training journey started and what all she's training, whether it's just about pet dog training or some advanced training as well. So Shivani, over to you if you could just introduce yourself.
Hi, Shrishti. I'm really excited to be here. So yes, as you said, my training journey recently started in past 3 years. Before that, actually, I was a lawyer, like a practicing lawyer, and
All right.
uh, 2017 is when I went and did my course, dog training course. But before that, I would like to give you a little background. So my husband and I got our first dog, Electra, a German Shepherd, from my parents, and
Okay.
she came with a whole lot of issues like separation anxiety to start with one. Then
Right.
she
Right.
also had a lot of leash reactivity issues, etc. And we couldn't
Okay.
figure out why that was happening. We couldn't communicate with her well, and we tried getting help, but it was not really working. So I decided
Right.
to start reading myself about dog behavior and why is she reacting in a certain way. What are the reasons
Right.
behind it? And that sort of really helped me push into the field. And it sort of I got really excited reading about it. And then when I was implementing the things that I was learning, it was working. And I went to Titanium Canine in 2017, and it was a wonderful experience. I came back a whole different person, and I was anyway was wanting to have a change. I was pretty saturated with my law career, and I think that was a good change because I came back and then I observed that the things that I learned at Titanium Canine with regard to my basic obedience and behavior training, like understanding dogs in general, changed
Right.
a lot of my perspective towards how I looked at her. And
Right.
yes, so that was a change when I came back and I quit law, and that's when I started fully, started helping my friends with the dogs that they had the problems and stuff. So I think that was a
Okay.
transition. I would say
Oh wow.
2017 is, yeah, when I completely
Nice.
got into it. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So,
Yeah.
so for everyone who've just joined us today, we'll be talking about separation anxiety. And as Shivani, also mentioned that her training journey also started more off with her first pet, who's German Shepherd. And when her pet also started displaying all the signs of separation anxiety. So, Shivani, if you could just help the viewers understand what separation anxiety is exactly about, and what basically is, like, to start off with, what basically, how do you define separation anxiety? What is it about actually?
Okay, so separation anxiety as a word is very commonly used in our dog training world. And, when you speak to pet parents, they tell you a lot about their dogs and the base, like everybody wants to say, oh, my dog is suffering from separation anxiety. But technically speaking, separation anxiety can be defined as distress caused in the dog due to
Right.
absence of an attachment figure. Now, that
Right.
absence and the attachment figure, these two are very important. An attachment figure could be, of course, it's human related, and the attachment
Right.
figure could be your the dog's handler, like the owner. It could be anybody from the family. So
Right.
a lot of times what happens is, like, we're so used to having the dogs around, and the dogs are
Right.
used to looking at us, seeing us all the time in the house, etc. They're
Right.
following us. The moment we get out of the picture, that's when they sort of start freaking out, and they start feeling
Right.
uncomfortable with our
Right.
non-presence. So that
Right.
causes anxiety, right? So that
Right.
causes that fear in them, that why is that happening? Why can I not
Right.
see the person? And is it
Right.
abandonment, or so it's a complex behavior, and it can be probably seen more in dogs who already have anxiety issues. So
Right.
a dog who is nervous, like genetically nervous, who has a fear-based problem. So those dogs, if left alone, will probably
Right.
be more inclined to face this issue. And
Correct.
the common problems that that you see, like so it's an undesirable behavior that is that the dog does, which you call
Right.
separation anxiety, which leads you
Right.
to the conclusion that, oh, maybe the dog is suffering from that. So,
Right.
how do we tell, like, okay, what are the common symptoms that we see in dogs suffering from separation anxiety? So, to start with, like, it's when you come back home and you've seen, like, the cushion has been destroyed or the furniture has been chewed up by the dog. So, destruction and excessive vocalization, like the dog is barking and whining a lot when you leave the house. And
Right.
it's like pacing up and down. The dog cannot
Right.
relax, cannot come
Right.
down to a calm level.
Right.
Salivation again, like the dogs start like salivating a lot. Then
Right.
and there are a lot of degrees of that also. Like for instance,
Right.
if a dog is suffering from minor separation anxiety, then the dog will probably be at the door or look out the window, wait for you. And if the dog
Right.
has extreme case of separation anxiety, then the dog can also exhibit self-injurious behaviors, like they start chewing their paws and excessive grooming, like licking themselves too much. So that is bad. Then they
Right.
try to break out of the door. They start scratching and like trying to break out of the crate. That's when some dogs injure their mouth and paws, etc. So it can be pretty dangerous if it's not handled well. Yes.
Right.
So yeah.
Right.
So
So yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So for all the viewers who've just joined us, we are like, as you can see, like today's topic, we're talking about separation anxiety and what exactly separation anxiety, because especially considering the current situation that we're all on, we're all in current pandemic situation, because of the COVID-19 situation that has been there since past couple of months, and especially since March, we've been in a lockdown situation and we've not really been able to go out, going for our usual probably meetings or get-togethers and stuff. So from the past couple of months, at least from past 4 to 5 months, our dogs have been so used to and so habitual seeing us, because earlier when we used to be on a usual our normal lifestyle, they probably used to just see us in the morning before we used to head out at the office,
Yes.
and probably in the evening once we're back, so they were still used to that probably 6 to 8 hours of window of staying alone. But now
Yes.
that from the past 8 months, now they've been in a habit of seeing us all the time, sticking right next to us all the time. Probably since we're there, we're giving them more attention. It's just us, the main handlers, who's always feeding them. So, there
Mm.
are, I think, with our lives now slowly getting back to normal, it's going to be much more challenging, because even the dogs that would not have had separation anxiety will now probably to a certain extent start displaying signs of separation anxiety, be it
Absolutely.
a
Yes.
smallest of sign, like just normally waiting at the door, whining, and probably just, as you correctly mentioned, that probably destroying things, self-destructive
Mm.
behaviors. So I think it's actually one of the best topics to discuss today, because now that everyone is getting back to their usual life, we need to understand that there are certain protocols that we have to either get back to the same routine, if at all we've been following one, and if at all we've not been following, then this is actually the right time to start getting back to the usual routine, so that dog, we're progressively and gradually introducing dog to the routine, and the dog also
Mhm.
doesn't have to be away from us all of a sudden, that now from tomorrow onwards all of a sudden now you won't see us for 6 to 8 hours. So it has to be a
Absolutely.
gradual progression. So
Absolutely. Yes.
Shivani has just explained us what exactly separation anxiety, and what changes does can one see in their dogs if at all they're going through separation anxiety. So now we will come on the topic, which is about prevention from separation anxiety, or we can say like how to fix separation anxiety. So Shivani, if you can shed some light on that as well, that would be like really great.
Absolutely. Shrishti, you mentioned something very important with respect to the fact that now our lives are slowly getting back to normal. And there would
Right.
be a point where everybody would, like the kids would go to school, we would go back to our normal working routines or step outside for our chores, etc. So that is
Right.
when the dog will not be prepared, because right now, for the past few months, the dog has seen us all the time. And the
Right.
moment now we step out, he's going to he's going to be at a loss, he would not understand why is that happening. So it's
Right.
important to prepare the dog for that. It is important
Right.
to let the dog know it is okay to be alone for a while. It is okay to be sort of independent. Independent is the
Right.
right word, because
Right.
owner dependency causes a lot of problems, and that is like my first point when I talk about how to prevent it from
Right.
fixing is, yes, that is the something that we'll come to later, but talking about prevention, the first thing is teaching the dog independence is very important. Letting the
Right.
dog know it's okay to be alone at certain points of time, and
Right.
just making a schedule for the dog, creating a structure where the dog
Right.
is probably work on your solid place command, where the dog is
Right.
not following you from room to room. He's on
Right.
in his, either in his crate, or he's seated on like his bed in a corner,
Right.
wherever, where he can see
Right.
everything happening, but he's not like really like following you like a tail. And
Right.
that's one thing that you can work on, so that he learns how to be independent and can be comfortable being himself in the house alone.
Correct.
So, and
Correct.
if suddenly you expose the dog to 6 hours of isolation, that he's not going to take well. If you
Right.
introduce him to start with 6 minutes, then probably you're not setting the dog up for failure. Then you're probably
Right.
working towards making the dog understand this is how it works. I will come back,
Right.
but you have
Right.
to understand that this is not abandonment. I will be
Right.
coming back, and you don't have to feel alone or confined
Right.
in a space. Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
that is one, like and every family member, I feel, has to be on the same page, because a lot of
Correct.
times what happens is, like I might feel that the dog has to be created at those particular intervals, but
Right.
my husband, or somebody else in the
Someone
family
else in
may
the
not.
family.
Exactly.
True.
So it's important that everybody is on the same page, and then we fall.
That's true.
It's beneficial for the dog. That's
Right.
how
Makes
it
sense. Yeah.
works. Yeah.
Right.
Then
And prevention also,
hmm,
like prevention would more or less be applicable on young puppies, probably
hmm,
2 3 month 4 month old pup we've just
yes,
got home, or
yes,
probably with still younger dogs, probably a year old or so, who've
hmm,
not
hmm,
really
hmm.
developed separation anxiety, but just because of the previous 4 months or 5 months, the schedule
Exactly.
again that they've been seeing us all the time, probably there is a slight possibility that they might develop it. So how to make
Absolutely.
sure to not do it? So this would be more of for dogs who do not have it, to ensure how to
Hmm.
really prevent it,
Yes.
right?
Actually,
Yeah.
we'll be surprised at the result. Like I'm. This is something like I have personally experienced with regard to one of my clients, saying that the dog was completely crate trained, and he
Right.
was following a certain routine before the
Right.
lockdown happened. Those three
Right.
months changed everything, because the dog was
Right.
never crated, or crated very
Right.
irregularly. So he was like,
Right.
it's all right to be outside. It's okay
Right.
to
Right.
see them every time I'm outside the crate. I don't have to go in. Like, so
Right.
it's like, so then you probably have to work backwards again. You have to start from the
Correct.
scratch, even with adult dogs. It's
Correct.
something that, yes, you can prevent
Shivani,
in
just a
puppies.
minute.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to cut you in between. Actually, my laptop is almost about to die. There's very low battery. So you
No
just
problem.
continue talking
Closely.
about it. I'll just
Yes.
quickly get my charger.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so if even if you have an adult dog, I would suggest that you should follow the same routine that you were following before the lockdown happened, or during the time when you see yourself going back to work in the next 2 3 months. This is your window and opportunity of training. This is the time when you can tell the dog, okay, nothing changes with regard to your schedule. You have to still go back. You have to be in the crate at these particular times. Nothing changes in the routine. So to have a stable routine even during this time is very important, I would say. And yes, I think also introducing the dog to regular absences and shorter duration of absences. I've covered this earlier. Like, don't throw the dog into the crate for like 6 to 7 hours to see if the dog can be comfortable. No, you have to train the dog, and you have to make the dog learn how to be in the crate comfortably. You have to introduce the crate properly. And even with that, when you have to step out, let the dog know that okay, you'll probably step out for a minute, come back in, and then, like, okay, the dog can be out in another, say,
Sorry.
an hour the next day, or 2 hours. So that's how you, like, sort of introduce the dog to being
Right.
isolated. So,
Right.
yeah, Shristi, I was saying that, it's like you have to introduce the dog to be independent in like smaller
Right.
durations also. right.
Right,
You cannot
right.
have like
Yeah. So I
yeah,
think for prevention, it's very important that we, set a particular routine, a structured routine for the dog, which we need to follow throughout. I think
yeah,
on a regular basis to ensure that we are making sure that the dog, really doesn't develop all of these issues, anxiety issues, self-destructive behaviors. I mean, they don't
yes.
develop and, display all of those self-destructive behaviors. So
Mm-hmm.
I think a structured routine where we're probably able to tire out the dog mentally and physically, that would
Absolutely,
go
yes,
a long way, because
yes,
that will help the dog in prevention. Because when we're not giving that window to the dog to be free, to
mm,
be a completely charged Duracell battery, basically, that the dog is just wondering what to do. So obviously
yes,
in that case, then the dog would be more of like कि ठीक है मैं ये भी कर लेता हूँ वो भी कर लेता हूँ. Then the dog
yeah,
is going to use their own brain. So we need to make sure
exactly.
that we channelize their energy. It's the same, I think, for
Absolutely.
humans as well. That for humans also, if let's say we have to sit at home doing nothing for at least a month, we will also tend to be a bit more snappy, a bit
Mm,
more irritable.
yes,
But if
yes,
we're on a regular basis, if we are following a certain routine, we're
yes,
completely occupied with our work schedule, then
right,
probably even if there's something that might bother us, if we would have been free, we might not give too much attention to that. So that, I
exactly.
think, goes a long way in
Yes,
preventing separation anxiety. Because if
absolutely.
we're not giving that extra overthinking while at time, even like
Yeah,
again as I said, it's applicable for humans also, that's when
right.
we can ensure that the dog doesn't develop the anxiety in the first place. Right,
Exactly. And yeah, so exercise the dog well. Like even when
right,
you have to leave the dog at home, make sure that he has walked, he has relieved himself, he has exercised, you have mentally stimulated the dog. A lot of times, mental stimulation is more important than physical, like exercise.
right,
So it's
right,
important to give the dog something to do. And
right,
very importantly, when a lot of this is something that I'm guilty of doing before I got into dog training. As I was telling you, when we got a dog, like she was like she was showing certain symptoms of separation anxiety. Like because we had a help at home, he would tell us, he would give us the feedback. And
right,
that was the time when I was also working and I was stepping out for 12 hours a day. So when I would
right,
come back, he'd be like, okay, she was like, very calm and she was waiting at the door, whining a little. So we were like, oh my God, this is so sweet. She's missing us. But it's not about
right,
you, it's about what you
right,
do to make the
right,
dog feel like that. Right.
right,
So
right, right,
what used to happen is like then we used to be like, oh my God, baby, it's okay. We'll be back soon. Don't worry about it. And then when we'll come, she'll be super hyper. So we'll hug her and then all that drama. So
right,
basically, what is important is that you have to be very, very low key in entering the
correct,
house and exiting the house.
correct,
Don't
correct,
make a big deal out of it. Don't then the dog will get into that mode. You want the dog to be calm. You don't want the dog to be hyper and restless.
right,
So the moment
right,
you're like, okay, bye, I'll see you later, then the dog starts anticipating, oh my God, she's leaving right now. What is going to happen?
right,
So then,
right,
you don't want that. You want the dog to be
right,
calm. So make
right,
sure that you don't make any fuss about it. You just pick up your stuff and then go. A lot of times, what dogs are doing is they're smart like that. They're conditioned to think like, okay, she's picked up a key now. Like she's wearing those particular shoes now. This is the time to step out. So what
right,
you condition the dog. It's not your fault. It happens inevitably. The dogs are
right,
smart, so they
right,
understand that. So also, if that is happening, there's certain dogs who anticipate certain behaviors and the body language of the owners.
right.
So probably
Mm-hmm.
try and change that your routine. Like don't or probably pick up the keys like half an hour and put it in your pocket before you have to leave. Don't
Right,
do it right before
right,
you go. So
correct.
these certain changes that you can make to prevent it, like if your dog is already
Right.
showing certain
Yeah,
behaviors. Yeah.
so yeah, these I think are few very important pointers when we're trying to work on the dog, and especially a
Hmm.
dog who already has developed separation anxiety, right? Because
Hmm.
it is very, again, important to put the dog into the structure, follow, because
Yeah.
all of the pointers that you've mentioned are actually very important pointers, but at the same time, these are very minute, unintentional errors, I think, that the pet owners make, because that's a
Hmm.
usual way how we greet a human. So, for example, if we've come back from a long day of work, or if we,
Hmm.
go out and meet a friend and we're meeting them, let's say, after probably a day or two. That's like how we do. The moment we see
Yes.
them, we're like, oh hi, what's up, how you've been,
Yes.
and stuff like that.
Yes.
So I think that kind of emotion we relate with the dog as well. So that's a very,
Yes.
very minute sort of difference when it comes to human interaction versus human to dog interaction. But again, I've seen that a lot of pet parents again unintentionally
Mm.
doing it because they're
Yes.
not really aware that these slight errors might add is actually adding on to the dog's anxiety. We A lot of
It's adding
pet
to the
owners
stress.
are usually clueless ki we're probably trying to do everything possible, but the dog is still anxious when they're
Mm.
at the same time failing to understand that these slight changes in their behavior and how they respond
Mm.
to the dog when they're exiting or when they're coming back from work, how they make a huge difference. So again, if you could just point
Mm.
out few very important pointers to be followed by them in order to make sure that if at all their dogs have already developed separation anxiety, how to make sure
Mm.
that they fix it. Like if you can just
Right.
suggest a basic routine, structured routine, and few do's and don'ts
Mm.
that they follow.
Mm. Mm. So yes, even with regard to fixing it, like sometimes it sort of overlaps how to prevent it and how to fix it.
Right,
It's also very dog specific.
right,
You cannot have one rule fits all. Every dog will
right,
be slightly different. However, there are
right,
certain general criteria that we should follow in order to
right,
address these problem behaviors. Like for instance, dependency, as I said, is one. Like avoid making the dog too dependent on you. Stop the following around from one room to the other.
right,
Teach him a good place command if possible. Okay, work with a dog trainer close by if you have one around you. Seek help if you have to. But teaching the dog structure is very important. Make sure the dog
right,
follows that routine. If you
right,
have created a routine for the dog, stick to that. Okay, there are no
right,
holidays. It's not a holiday for your dog. It's a holiday for you. So,
right,
stick to all those things. And one very important part is systematic desensitization. This is
right,
like a slightly technical term, which I would, in layman term, I would relate to it as like human phobia. So when you deal with human phobia, for instance, I'm hydrophobic, so I
right.
cannot be in water, and it
Okay,
freaks me out. And
okay,
okay, for instance, if I have to, and swimming is like a skill that I should know, and I have learned over a period of time. But if
right,
I were to be thrown and dumped in the water without knowing, like with that fear in me, and
right,
without having any skill of how to come out of it, then
right,
I'm like, okay, this is it. It ends here for me. But
right,
if I'm introduced to how the water feels, the touch of water against my hand, and okay, I
right,
can be in 2 feet by myself, and then
right,
gradually increase my distance in the water, etc. So this is like something that you're introducing slowly and gradually. So if the dog
right.
is for instance having a fear of being isolated or being left alone, then I would not
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest you introduce to the dog to that isolation gradually and very
Right,
very slowly. So like
right,
mild versions of feared stimulus is what we call it.
right.
So,
Okay,
like very, very mild version. So probably leave the dog in for like 5 minutes, then come back, and then,
right,
like very gradually increase it. So yeah,
right,
this is something which a lot of times has to be done alongside the
right,
other changes in the pattern, because the dog is not, he has to be sort of counter conditioned to think, okay, this is
right,
fine. I can deal with the
right,
fear. Yeah.
right, right, right,
Then, as I had mentioned earlier, don't put the dog stress in cue, like the subtle changes that you make in your daily routine with regard to going and stepping out. If the dog, for instance, where we'll come to crate training, for instance, if the dog is used to being crated only during the day at a specific time and at night, then the dog will not be comfortable being crated at any other random hour, right? So it's
right,
important for you to introduce him to that self isolation for at random periods of time also. So he should
right.
not start predicting and anticipating. Or if you're only creating the dog, on the first floor, this now the moment
Mm-hmm.
you start going to the first floor, he will start queuing up that behavior. Like, okay, now is the time for me to be alone. So these
Right,
are the subtle changes that you can do. But most
right,
importantly is crate training the dog. I think I
right,
cannot stress enough on how important that particular factor is. Crate is
right,
something that teaches your dog to be independent, as I have like really stressed on that independence part. And also, your dog is, he finds his own space, and
right,
he can be safe in it also. If
right,
the dog,
right,
a lot of times when the dogs are left in the house, outside the crate, for instance, in the house alone, then if they're pacing a lot and if they're destroying things, that can actually
right,
lead to a lot of other things. Like it can be dangerous for the dog more than
right,
the destruction in the house. If the dog
right,
can eat
right,
something that he's not supposed to, he can injure himself. So there are a
right.
lot of there could be freak accidents. You don't know. So it's better to be safe than sorry. So make sure that
Yeah, so
you yeah.
yeah, so that
Mm,
I think is actually a very interesting topic, trade training, because there's a lot of buzz around it. There's a lot of confusion among the pet owners. Like obviously the professionals, so like the canine trainers, they already know the benefits of it. But I've
yeah.
seen, as out of my own personal experience, that I've seen a lot of people who are really not sure whether crate training would be the right idea or not. Like there are a lot of myths around crate training that I've seen in general, that probably what a lot of pet owners I've seen, how they associate with crate training is that it's inhumane. It's like trapping the dog into a pinjara sort of a thing. We would
Yeah.
never do it to our human kid. So there are a lot of things, again, because I think it's more has to do with the appearance of the crate. Because in general, if we see, even be it on Amazon or any pet store or on most of the websites, if we see, the crates are usually made up of metal, and mostly of those thin wires or metal pipes or rods, which makes it look like jail. So
Yeah.
that's what a human psychology, like if we have to relate, we think कि नहीं हमने dog को jail में बंद कर दिया है, right? So that is another thing, that if you could just shed some light upon it, like what are the exactly, as a let's say dog trainer, what myths have you also come around, like when
Mm.
you suggest crate training to a client, to a pet owner, like how do they respond to it? If you could just share your experience around it.
Yes, definitely. So surprisingly, I've not had a very difficult time explaining it to my clients who I'm training with.
Right, right,
Like the advantages of trade training and how it really helps in the longer run. So
right,
yes, but I do come across every now and then that my dog is well behaved. It's fine. My dog doesn't need to be in the crate. This and
right.
the as you said, the look of the crate is so daunting. Like you humans picture themselves being in it and like, okay, this I
Yeah,
can't be.
right,
No, but
right,
it's a different thing. It's a different. The dogs think differently. The dogs' perception of certain things is very different. We should not humanize them also, and we should not put our emotions into it. It's what is
right,
important is to bust the myth of crate being confinement. It's not
right,
confinement. It's actually a safe space for your dog. Okay, so you're
right,
teaching the
right,
dog structure. That you're teaching the dog to go and relax. You're teaching the dog calmness because
right,
if the dog is out and about, he's doing certain things randomly. He's like destroying something or chewing something, waiting for food, stealing things, whatever it is. Like, he has no
right,
idea. He's not being told what to do. So it's
right,
not his fault, of course. So, like
right,
a lot of times, I tell my pet parents, like, okay, would you like to sleep outside the bedroom in like the hallway or by yourself? Like,
right,
no,
right.
right? You need your space
Out
the
of
same
their
way
personal
dogs.
space, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. The dogs also
Right,
need their personal space. And
right,
a lot of times, like the way I introduce the crate is like I leave the I'm sure like you also have followed the same, like a lot of us dog trainers also follow the same routine. Like you leave the crate door open, and
right,
you have a positive association with the crate. And it's
right,
a lot of times it's about the human's mindset, and it's like the
right,
mental conditioning of humans more than the dog. The dogs will actually
right.
go in and sleep. I
Yeah, that's true.
yeah. You leave the door open. You put their toys inside, and you put their food and stuff. They'll
Right,
automatically go in and come out and they
right,
actually, even without any reinforcements, I've seen dogs who go and sleep very comfortably. So they like
right,
that enclosed space. They like their own
right,
space. So there's nobody hopping on top of them or like
right,
going. Their sleep is not getting disturbed, and that also creates a whole lot of other issues then. So
right,
it's better
right,
that you train the dog to be in the crate, And it's
Right.
important at the same time to teach the dog how to be calm in the crate also, because if the dog is constantly barking and whining in the crate, that means either he doesn't like isolation or you've not introduced the crate properly to him.
The right way.
So
Correct. Correct.
a lot of times, even like especially with dogs with who suffer from separation anxiety, tend to bark and whine and really
Right.
ask for your attention a lot. Like, okay, what is happening? They feel that their stress levels go up. Okay, that's when
Right.
you have to understand. Okay, this is when I need to take a few steps back, and probably I have gone too far in the process,
Correct. Correct.
and then
Right.
start from the scratch. For instance, I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm training a dog who's a rescue dog. So
Okay.
that is again one thing that I wanted to cover. Dogs coming from rescue homes are more prone to separation anxiety because
Right.
they already have an experience of shift moving from one home to the other, from and
Abandonment
then
and
the
all. Right.
abandonment and
Right.
then the shelter
Right.
coming in between,
Right.
where a lot of times the adjustment period lasts longer than expected. So
Correct.
they're getting introduced to different environment and then again rehomed. So that creates a
Right.
lot of stress, right?
Right.
So with
Right.
that dog, he's a wonderful dog. Like he is very, very food motivated, and you can train him. He's learned his solid place command, but his crate is like a huge problem because he doesn't like to be. I like he can't stand being in the crate even for like say now it's reached 30 minutes, but he
Wow.
has to see somebody. He cannot
All right.
have
Go.
the
The person
moment
cannot go out of sight,
the
basically.
person cannot go out. And
Right.
now we've reached a stage where we're actually standing outside the door, right outside the door,
All right.
and the dog and it's important to read when are
Right.
you actually going to reinforce the right behavior. So what I'm looking
Correct.
for is
Correct. Correct.
calmness. Okay, what I'm looking for is, okay,
Correct.
don't worry about it, you will come out of the crate. It's right now, you
Right.
just like you're there for a while. So the
Right.
dog like usually I think the average time is about 5 to 10 minutes. With this
Right.
dog, it's 10 seconds. So the moment he
Okay.
doesn't see anybody, that whining and barking starts. So
Starts again.
in
Okay.
that, yeah, and I have to be very careful. If I enter at that moment, that is when the dog starts to think, oh, my barking is what is like
Working.
making that
Yeah.
person come
Right.
in.
Appear
So
again.
that's,
Correct.
yeah, I'm not doing it intentionally, but a lot of times people what they do is they end up reinforcing the wrong undesirable behavior. So you have to be
Right.
careful
Right.
about your body
Right.
language. Never
Right.
talk to your dog when you're training the dog in the crate,
Right.
right? So the dog,
Right.
if
Right.
he's barking and whining, ignore it. It's
Right.
fine. I know it's difficult, but
Right.
you have to learn how to ignore. And
Right.
then also like look for that opportunity where the dog is calm, and that could be seconds. Like that could be
Right.
exactly like a 2 second window where you have to go and reinforce that
Mark
calmness.
the behavior.
So
Right. Right.
exactly. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into like systematic desensitization, and then
Right.
having a structure, making the dog understand. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I think you rightly mentioned that most of the people are not too sure about the crate training is because first, obviously, as we discussed, it's because of the appearance of the crate in general, and also because people again they do not understand that if crate training is done the right way, probably it would be more beneficial than
yes,
having negative impact on the dog. So obviously
absolutely
it
yes.
it is a very gradual process, and it also
Hmm.
varies from dog to dog. So when I used to suggest crate training to my clients, that's what I used to tell them, that in general I over WhatsApp I used to share with them a general structure and schedule. But that's what I used to
Hmm.
tell them, that you have to, as you also mentioned, that we have to observe the dog, and we have to see whether the dog is comfortable now moving on to
Hmm.
the second step. So for example,
Exactly.
today is the first day. I am a pet owner, for example.
Hmm.
I've got a dog, I mean a crate home for my dog. So if
Hmm.
today is the first day that I'm putting my dog inside the crate, I will just now, for next at least probably I would say a week, I will just try and focus on building positive association. So I have a lab basically who's now going to turn 6 years. I started his
Oh,
crate training when there was actually even a question around it. I will uh, just a minute, I'll just find it. Yeah, so there was a question by Harsha Sharma. She was asking, "My dog is 1 year old. Can we crate train him now?" So that's what I would like to share my journey. So my lab, who's now almost going to turn 6 years, when he was around 1.5 to 2 years of age, he was also going through a lot of behavioral changes, and he had some sort of behavior issues, fear-based aggression and stuff. So for him also, I had to introduce crate training to him when he was around 1 to 1.5 years of age. So that's what I had to stick to. That once I got the crate home, for next at least a week or 10 days, I was like, I will go as slow as possible with the crate training, because I do not want to push crate training on my dog. I want my dog to enjoy the crate, being inside the crate.
Exactly.
So how do we do it is, as you correctly mentioned, that we have to form positive association. We have to make sure that all meals are given inside the crate, all toys are given inside the
Mm-hmm.
crate. The dog
Yes.
looks crate as their own personal space and their own personal room. So it's the same every time. We also come back from work, if we're super tired and we do not, probably not in a good mood, we do not feel like engaging with anyone in the house, we would
Mm.
probably just want to directly go inside our room and just take a time out for probably 30 minutes or
Yes.
60 minutes. And
Yes.
once we feel charged up again, that's when we
Mm.
would want to come out and really meet and greet and sit with
Absolutely.
everyone.
Yes.
Same with the
Yes.
dog. The dogs also need time out. But again, we have to make sure that we're doing it the right way, because if we're not doing it, then obviously we will see a lot of issues being popped up, that the dog is whining too much. A lot of
Yes.
I've also seen a lot of people who get crate home. They, instead of forming a positive association, every time the dog is doing something wrong, they just hold the dog and put the dog inside the crate.
Mm. Yes.
So that
Mm. Yes.
also yeah, builds a
Mm.
lot of negative association with the crate. So
Yes.
coming to, again, now that we've discussed myths, like, we will just come to what would the benefits of crate training be like. So for example, if I train, being a, again, pet owner, if I start training my 2 or 3 month old puppy right from the beginning,
Mm.
or even if I
Mm.
have to train a 1 year or 2 year old dog for crate training, like, what would be the benefits of crate training that you would suggest to people, and for
Mm-hmm.
which they should actually look up for crate training, if at all they're not doing at this point of time already.
Absolutely. So there are a number of benefits of crate training, and to start with the topic that we're talking about, separation anxiety, as we've already covered, it will really help the
Right,
dog to be independent. It will help the dog to learn how to be by himself, and at the same time, it will protect the dog from any getting into any dangerous situations where he's destroying
right,
something, or he's eating something that he's not supposed to. Uh,
right,
at the same time, like, there are a lot of dogs who have reactivity issues. So
right,
a dog who has, for instance, who's little nervous and who gets startled very easily. So when you have helps and all in the house, or a maid coming in and doing the regular cleaning, the
right,
slightest of that noise, or movement, will trigger that behavior, like, that fear in the dog, and he'll probably charge. Or to prevent these things, unwanted behaviors
right,
from happening, I would
right,
highly recommend the dog being in his own space, comfortable, so that he's not,
right,
there's no conflict arising, you're
right,
avoiding conflicts. And
right,
some dogs get startled when people cross over when they're sleeping. So
right,
that again is
right,
a problem. If the dog is comfortably sleeping in the crate, you would be preventing that completely. Then a dog,
right,
also, a lot of times, the dog doesn't know what to do. So if the
right,
dog is left alone for a while, say, and you're working or you're doing something, you're preoccupied, you can't supervise the dog, especially with puppies. They will go and chew something up and
right,
destroy something. So it's very
correct,
important,
correct,
at
correct,
least for the first few months, to supervise the dog. Unless you are not
right,
supervising, the dog should be in the crate, so that he's not getting
right,
into trouble. And then if he
right.
does destroy some of your expensive stuff, then that becomes like, okay, there's no
Yeah,
point
of course.
reprimanding
It's
the
a,
dog,
yeah,
because it's not the dog's
right,
fault. He should have been in the crate.
right,
So the number of
right,
benefits. Then when you're traveling, like if the dog has to be in a boarding facilities, and the dog has already learned how to be in the crate, he can also be very comfortable in a kennel. And
right,
it just gives the dog some structure. It gives the dog the confidence to be
right,
alone, and it's not confinement. Don't consider it
right,
as a confinement space. It's just teaching the
correct,
dog to
correct.
be independence. Yeah.
Correct. I think
Yeah.
another very important benefit of crate training is that if we've ensured that our puppy, as soon as we've got the pup home, we've started early crate training, or even for probably young dogs or adult dogs, once we've crate trained the dog, I think it becomes very easy for us to travel as well, be it with the
Yes.
dog or without the dog. So, for
Absolutely.
example,
Yes.
let's say if tomorrow I have to travel to, for example, some place uphill, for example, Manali, I have to go there with my friends. And if I want to take my dog along with me, I can
Hmm.
easily ensure that I can probably do a booking in some pet friendly hotel. So
Hmm.
I can make sure probably take the dog straight along and then just go on a nearby hike or trek with my
Hmm.
dog, probably
Yes.
2 3 hours. I've tired out the dog completely. That now I
Yes.
know for a fact that as soon as I'm back home, my dog will
Hmm.
be sleeping for next 2 3 hours straight. So we can just come back, just probably give the meal to the dog, put them inside their own personal space, their crate,
Yes.
ensuring
Yes.
that now we can probably for next 2 3 hours we can go to places, for example, exploring nearby places
Absolutely.
where dogs might not be allowed,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that
Absolutely.
will help us a lot in
Hmm.
ensuring that the dog in our absence is not really destroying anything in the
Hmm.
room, which would be the hotels or resorts property.
Exactly. Yes.
Basically the dog is in their own
Exactly.
personal space, and if in
Right.
case some let's say a staff member also has to come in and do the
Yes.
cleanup and everything, they also do
Exactly.
not have to worry that the dog is in there. They can
Right.
just easily do their thing, and they can just leave, and the
Absolutely.
dog will also chill in the crate. Another benefit,
Exactly.
let's say if we have to travel somewhere where we cannot take our dog along, it is always best that the first thing is that the dog is crate trained, and secondly the dog is used to a boarding and staying away from
Hmm.
us, because if the dog has been crate trained, is been used to staying in the crate, has been used to staying away from us since an early age, it's going to be
Yes.
very beneficial. Because ऐसा नहीं होगा कि अब for example I got a pup at 2 months, like the pup was 2 months, अभी 1.5 साल 2 साल तक मैंने कुछ भी नहीं किया, and after 2 years I have to go someplace. Now it's the first experience at 2 years of age. Now the
Yes.
dog has
Yes.
to be at the boarding, so that will
Yes.
be too much for the dog to take. I as a
Exactly.
person would also not be comfortable
Yes.
going to a completely new place and staying over there and not
Absolutely.
knowing anyone. So
Absolutely.
that way I think also crate training helps a lot actually. So
Yes. Right.
yeah, these are
Absolutely.
I think couple of benefits of crate training. And
I would like to
also,
also,
yeah,
I would like to add another thing. Like this has tremendously helped me also with
right,
getting my second dog. So when I went to Pune for my course and I came back with my working dog,
right,
Jabba, he is a Belgian
hmm,
Malinois. And
right,
that was actually the first time I was introduced to a crate. So
okay,
my trainer Dave was like very clear. He's like, okay, as long as you have a crate in your house, you can deal with the two dogs because my dog
correct, correct,
Electra, she
right,
is dog reactive. She's become much better. She's come a long way, but at that
okay,
time it was at the peak. So I was very
okay,
apprehensive. Like, how am I going to introduce the two dogs? So
right,
if and Jabba was already crate trained when he came to me. So
right,
he was used to being in the crate. So that really helped me. So if you're getting another dog in the house and you're introducing another dog into the pack, so it's very important that
correct.
you do it in a
Actually,
structured
that's
way
true.
so that you
Yes,
do there are no conflicts arising and you do like
right,
you don't create any conflicts. So that's again a
right.
very important part that
Yeah,
crate plays.
actually,
Yes.
that's actually a very important pointer for
Hmm.
households that have multiple dogs. Actually, this is crate
Yes.
training can be extremely beneficial because it's not
Hmm.
always possible for the humans or the main handler to be around all the time. And
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
let's say two dogs or four dogs or five dogs are staying together and they're just
Hmm.
left unsupervised throughout the day, they will end up learning more bad behaviors and negative behaviors
Absolutely.
than learning the good
Absolutely.
stuff. So yeah,
Exactly.
that again, that's actually a very valid and a very important benefit of crate training. So
Right.
we'll come out to our last topic, which is importance of owners training, and then we will quickly move ahead to the question answer round. We'll keep it really short because I think we've already exceeded the time. So
Okay.
yeah, if you could just give some pointers on like how if owners training can be important when it comes to training the dog, not just for fixing separation anxiety or for crate training, but in general the whole raising the dog, training the dog, ensuring that the dog behaves well in
Hmm.
inside the house, outside the house, in various situations. So if you could just give few pointers on that as well.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I think it's one of the main points. Like it's the most important when you get a dog. It's to understand the dog and to be able to communicate with the dog. Unless you have
Right,
a common language and a common theme of how you understand each other, there are always going to be conflicts and miscommunications, right? So
right,
as a trainer, I'm there to facilitate that. I'm there to
correct,
sort of coach you into understanding what the dog how to make the dog understand the language that you're trying to teach him, and this is how you do it.
right,
But
Right.
I think over a period of time, through my experiences, I've realized that instead of me working with the dog in isolation and then going through the whole handing over process, it is a much better way to work with the owners directly, because they are the ones who are going
All
to live
right.
with the dog. They are the ones who are
Right.
going to have to deal with the dog on an everyday basis. It's important that
Right.
they work on the foundation as well as obedience, if they want to work on
Right.
obedience. So,
Right.
and they understand their dog, in a better way. So,
Right.
I heavily work on my handler coaching, where I work
Right.
and I do not discriminate. I don't feel that, okay, they're not going to understand my jargon, or they're not going to understand what I'm trying to say. But I
Right.
think if you make your concepts clear, you lay down your
Right.
foundation work in a way that, okay, doesn't matter if you're a dog handler or you're a dog trainer, the language is going to be the same. It's not going to change,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you
Right.
explain them the concepts and you take them through the process slowly and gradually at their pace. I think
Right.
it is a much better way for the dog handler and the dog to form their relationship, and in the future,
Correct.
to avoid
Correct.
any conflicts, etc. Yes, so
That's
that's
true.
very
That's true.
important. Yes, so you should know how to handle your dog when it comes to, even when it comes to obedience, etc. You should train your dog. You should, even if your trainer
Right.
is coming in, please step in and
Right.
please tell them, okay, I want to learn this, I want to be part of the training process.
Right.
So that's very important. Yes.
Correct. All right. So we'll just now move to the question answer part. So we'll just move out to our first question, which is by Rashmi. She's asking, my dog just won't leave my side. He wants to tag along everywhere, from bathroom to kitchen to outside to like every place where she goes. So she's asking, how can I help him? Like probably how to fix that part. So I think more or less we've covered with two. I think
Yes.
Shivani, just give few pointers again, if you just
Yes.
quickly can summarize all of the
Sure.
pointers that we've talked about
Yes,
here.
it's actually a very common thing, and I think we've covered the important part of teaching the dog independence. It would
Right,
also depend a lot on how long the dog has practiced this. If the dog
right,
is a puppy, there's a
right,
lot more that you can do right from now. Even if the dog is
right,
an adult dog, start teaching him a little bit of independence for crate train him. That's
right,
very important.
right.
Yes, that's a very, very important. Crate training. Yes.
Yeah, all right. So next question is by Mr. Rahul. He's asking, at what age does the separation anxiety begin?
It's not age specific. It can also happen with puppies who have been separated from the litter at a very early age. A lot of times, especially the way our breeding practices, it's not that great. And dog owners, they pick up a pup from the litter at like 30 days or like less than that.
Right,
So
right.
it may start at a very early age also. Yes.
Right, right, and it. I think it also depends on when the handler starts again to make those unintentional errors.
Absolutely. Yes,
So
yes,
there's
absolutely.
there's
It can
no
happen.
as you correctly mentioned, there's no time frame as such. It completely
Yes,
depends on how we respond to the dog, how we meet the dog.
yes,
Again, the same pointers
absolutely.
that we've just
Yes,
covered earlier in the live
yes,
session. Yeah.
yes.
So moving on to the next question, it's by Srilata. She's asking, what if the dog knows that humans are at home, but out of sight? Still, they whine and bark at everything. How to handle this?
Yes, a lot of people have the same issue when. So I would like to understand if the dog is being created at that time, or if he's being left alone in the room, irrespective of whether he's in the crate or in the other room. They obviously know that you're there. And what has probably happened is, I'm not too sure. Of course, you'll have to give me a little more background, that you have sort of reinforced the moment the dog would have been whining or barking, you would have come back into the room. So the dog has probably thought that, okay, this is what is getting my handler in the sight. So he
Right,
started doing
right,
that more often. So you've
right,
sort of encouraged that like unknowingly. So
right,
I would recommend that you train the dog to be in the crate, if you can crate
right,
train the dog, and then
right,
uh, if the dog is barking and whining, do not enter the room at that time. Wait the dog to calm down, and the moment
right,
the dog calms down, go in and give him some treat, or probably just take him out of the crate at that time. So
right,
that again is a positive reinforcement, because he wants to get out, but he has to be
right.
calm before he can get out. Yeah.
Correct, correct, correct. So, all right. So we'll move on to the next question, which is, are certain breeds more predisposed to separation anxiety?
It's not breed specific, I would say. I would say that genetic predisposition would matter with regard to dogs with anxiety issues. If the dog is genetically anxious, then he is more
Right.
prone to separation anxiety as well.
All right. Okay. Then the next question is by Shelly. She's asking, my 10-year-old dog has a very bad separation anxiety. He refuses to eat if I go away somewhere. What should I do?
Okay, so 10-year-old, okay, so that means, and I would like to know how long that dog has been having
Skips
this
the meal.
issue. Yes,
Okay.
if the dog is refusing to eat, then, introduce the dog, like how long are you going for? That's also important. If
Right.
you're going for a very
Right.
long time, then
Right.
probably start introducing the dog to smaller periods of being alone, and then
Right.
making sure that there is a dog walker or a pet sitter who can come and be with your dog, because he's an old dog,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's important to consider the age factor and the amount of time that he's practiced that behavior also. And he's
Right.
so right now it's more important to manage the dog the way the way the problem is, and then introduce the dog to smaller periods of time, and also, like, get a help, like get some pet sitter or a dog walker.
Correct. Correct. All right. So I'll just move on to the next question. Just a minute. So next question is by Anushka. She's asking, my female beagle is 9. So for adult dogs, what can we do? I think regarding separation anxiety, she's talking about.
Even adult dogs can be trained to be in the crate, and they can
Right.
be trained in independence, and they can be
Right.
taught how to be in isolation and without the handler being in the picture. So you can start at
Right.
any age. It's just the process
Right.
has to be done right. You cannot
Right.
rush into it. You cannot skip the steps. Go
Right.
have a structured way of doing it, and probably if you
Right.
need, you can get somebody to step in for you and then help you with the process and forming a schedule for you, so that
Right.
it's done well. Yes, you can
Right.
start that.
Yeah. So I also another thing I feel that more or less what given the pointers that Shivani have been pointing out since the beginning of the session, and more or less I think it's the structure is similar and it fits to all of the queries related to separation anxiety and crate training. So what the structure that she's given, the pointers that she's given is more or less that what we have to follow irrespective of the dog's age. So even if the dog is be the dog's age, be it 9 months or 9 years of age, the only difference would come out to be that probably a 9-month-old dog or a younger dog would pick things up much faster as compared to an adult dog. It's the
Yes,
same. For example, if we want to teach some, for example, we have to introduce a new gadget to a 12-year-old kid. They might just figure it out on their own without really needing anyone's help and guidance.
right.
Whereas if I have to introduce the same sort of device to my someone who's of my mom's age or my dad's age, they
Yes,
might take it longer and they might keep on asking the same questions again because they've been used to
right.
living a certain sort of lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
your 9-year-old dog, again, you have to follow exact same pointers what Shivani has suggested upon. But yeah, you will have to probably do more repetitions as compared to someone who has a puppy or a
Yes.
younger dog. That puppy might just learn crate training and would be comfortable with crate training a month's time. Probably your dog might take 2 months or 3 months or 4 months. Completely depends on your dog's personality and probably if at all there's ever
Absolutely.
any level of anxiety as well. Right.
Yes. Patience
So
is the key. Yes.
yeah, exactly. So next question is by Varish. I have a beagle female, just 5 month old. If you please share some tips because she is very naughty. So I think again, if it's more about just correct us if we're wrong. If you're just asking in terms of again trait training and separation anxiety, we've already shared the pointers. You can just go again through the recorded version of the live session and go to the earlier, when we just started off the initial, I think 10-15 minutes of our discussion. That's where, Shivani has already informed all the pointers and things that we need to follow. So more or less that you have to do. But still, let's say if you're based out of Delhi NCR, by the end of this, I would also be sharing Shivani's handle so that you can just,
Okay.
reach out to her directly. And once she has a clear understanding of the dog's age, the dog's personality, what sort of schedule you also follow, what sort of lifestyle
Yes.
you have, then I think she'd be able to guide much better. So coming on to the next question, which is by Sudeep though, he's asking, hello ma'am, good evening. I have a query regarding puppy humping. Some people say that due to anxiety or because of energy, too much of, I mean, because they're high on energy, they do that. Please suggest me what is the reason behind this and how to stop it. my puppy is now 3 month old and he started doing just now.
Okay. Yes, mounting and humping is it's quite common, and a lot of dogs do it for different reasons.
Right,
Yes, the dog could be very, very hyper, and his energy is not being channelized in the right way. So probably,
right,
since you're saying he's a puppy, rule that out first. Try working with the dog and try making a structure, and make sure that he works for his food, make sure that he works for his toys. Like, have a structured session with him, like when you're playing and the dog is mentally and physically tired. I
right,
think if you'll have to probably rule one or like all these things out. It could be also it could be any a variety of reasons. So this just
right.
since it's a puppy, I would suggest you rule this out first. Yes.
Correct, correct. All right.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next question, which is by Meera ma'am. She's asking, what are the common behaviors by humans which induces separation anxiety in their pets, which they do unintentionally? That I think we've been talking about since the beginning of
Yes.
the session. So if you could just point out few pointers
Yeah.
that humans tend to make those unintentional errors that adds on to the anxiety of the dog.
Yeah. So, for instance, if the dog is already suffering from anxiety issues when he's left alone, and when we make a big fuss about leaving and entering back into the house, that sort of
Right,
really riles up the dog, and his anxiety and the stress levels go up. And
right,
when we start queuing up the stress in a way where we are doing certain things right before leaving, that
right,
also the dog starts anticipating. So you can
right,
probably, like, we are doing this unintentionally. We're not making the dog feel stressed about us leaving, but these are the
right,
things that we naturally do. We pick up our keys, wear our shoes, and go out. When we
right,
come back, we welcome them with a huge hug and this and that. And also
right,
when we are training the dog to be in the crate
right,
alone, so that's when the dog barks and whines, we come back in and we're like, we sweet talk them, okay, it's okay, don't worry. But what the dog is actually understanding is like, it's okay, continue doing what you're doing. So we're
right,
actually
right,
adding on to the stress. We're doing it
right,
unintentionally, but
right.
it's reinforcing the behavior. Yes.
Right. I think another very important pointer is also, unintentionally petting the dog. So,
Yes.
again, that's
Yes.
our human way of,
Yes.
understanding and relating to things that anytime we want to, let's say, calm down a kid, we would just,
Hmm.
give them a
Hmm.
gentle stroke and say, koi baat nahi,
Hmm.
it's okay. For example, when they're going for
Hmm.
injections or for a haircut,
Hmm.
first time they cry, or in general, any situation, if we have to see,
Yes.
we just say,
Yes.
koi baat nahi, it's okay, all right. So the same
Hmm.
sort of error I think we make, either the second handler makes or we as the main handler make, that anytime we're seeing that the dog is barking, for example, if I'm holding my dog and my dog is anxious that my mom is actually going out of sight, I'm just petting my dog saying, koi baat nahi, abhi aa rahi hai, 2 minute mein aa rahi hai. So the dog
Yes.
is probably not able to associate all of those human, language that
Exactly.
we're trying to communicate.
Yes.
All the dog is trying to understand the petting means good boy or good girl, keep on doing
Yes.
it. So
Yes.
that again, I think is a big thing which
Yeah.
actually adds on to a lot of fear also in dogs, especially when
Very.
we go to the vet and
Yes.
whenever it's their turn for their vaccine or injections, the dog is
Yes.
usually stressed because they're surrounded by
Yes.
the vet and the staff
Yes.
members. Then there are dogs around,
Exactly.
different smells.
Right.
So we say, "Koi
Yes.
baat nahi, bus lag gaya." So we're just unintentionally trying to reinforce the
Absolutely.
fear
Yes.
and the
Yes.
anxiety in the dog. So I
Yes.
think these are
Exactly.
few pointers, Jana, if we have
Yes.
to list some. So moving on to the next question, it's by Varish. He's asking, me and my wife both are working, but due to this lockdown, we're staying with my beagle, and she's just 5 months old now. Slowly, we'll start going to our offices. So please suggest how we'll teach her to stay alone around 9 hours at home and how she'll manage. So that's again, Varish, we've already discussed about it in earlier when we just started off with the discussion. So even in the beginning of the question answer round. So again, you'll have to make sure that you get in touch with a good trainer. Again, if you're based out of Delhi NCR, reach out to Shivani. She will give you a complete structure on what do's and don'ts, what routine you need to follow. If at all you do not have a crate at the moment, you'll have to get a crate. You'll have to understand from a trainer that how do you go ahead and go around with the crate training. So if at this point of time you're not directly starting to go off to your usual routine like going to your offices right away, it's actually the best time to get the crate home, because if you're going to be away, as you've listed, 9 hours at least, it's best to start off with 30 minutes. Then once the dog is comfortable, moving it
Yes.
up for an hour. then
Yes.
2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. So by the
Exactly.
time
Yes.
it's time for you, everyone in the house to go to their usual routine offices and all, you can ensure that the dog is there in the crate. Now, if there's some house staff or anyone in your absence who can at least just in those 9 hours of interval just take out the dog for quick pee poop
Right.
break, give them
Yes.
meal if needed. But I think those are again the same pointers that we've discussed about. But again, if you need
Absolutely.
any further guidance, you can reach out to Shivani for the same. So we'll move out to the next question, which is by Anand. He's saying everyone cannot train without guidance. They will do more damage than good. So I think that's
Abs-
actually pretty much true. That's why we were really insisting everyone. So whoever has to start off with crate training and do not have one at the moment, please do not start it on your own, because even on Google or even on if you try and read it online, there are a lot of misleading articles as well. So it's
Yes.
best you get in touch with a trainer in
Right.
your area or in your city, some good
Yes.
trainer who has an experience of crate training, who has a good sort of knowledge about crate training, would be able to guide you further, or whoever the pet owner or pet parent is. So it's best to understand, because again, same structure might not work for all dogs. So you'll have to
Yes.
understand which breed you have, what sort of anxiety, if at all they have any.
Yes.
So obviously
Yeah.
that's actually a very valid point, that you have to,
Right.
for any of the behavior related issues, I think if Shivani might also agree that it's best to get in touch with the trainer first and then work
Yes.
on it, because just
Yes.
as per our own assumptions we might end up doing things differently, because again, human and
Absolutely.
dog psychology, there's a very minute difference, but जहाँ पे भी वो minute
Yeah.
difference है, वो इतना large difference ले आएगा in terms of
Yes.
the dog's behavior and changing
Right.
the dog's temperament.
Right.
Then next question is, what is the pet store name which you mentioned? So I am not sure which pet store. I know
Petaki. It's
if
Petaki.
at all yeah, so if at all you're asking about the customized my company basically, it focuses on, as I spoke about it in the beginning, pet furniture. So if at all you're asking about a store that in which you can get customized crates as per the needs of your dogs, as per the needs of your house as well, so I make actually crates that can be used by both humans and dogs. So it's a multi-functional sort of a crate. So it has a space in the bottom where the dog can just sit in and rest, where you can put the dog's bed. On the top, it has a tabletop so that you can keep your own belongings. It has few drawers, so that can be made and can be customized as per the client's need, and obviously the size and breed of the dog. So you can, I will, by the end of it, I will also share the link of my website. You can just go through it, and you can directly reach out to me through WhatsApp also for that, and I'd be able to help you better. Moving on to the next question. Um, it's by Himani. She's asking, I know we're talking about separation anxiety, but could you please help with litter training resist dog and a dog who gets petrified when he hears thunder? So it's
Uh,
slightly off
yeah,
topic, but if you could
sure,
want
sure.
to, yeah.
Of course. So Himani, how old is the dog? And has he you're saying that he is petrified of thunder? So at a very early stage, when the dog, like when we get a puppy home, we go through this period called socialization, where we expose the dog to different sounds, different environmental stressors, where the dog will experience those at a later stage. So, if you probably haven't done that part, I would suggest you to get in touch with a trainer nearby and get the help required to introduce the dog in a structured way to the things that he's scared of. A lot of dogs who are taken by surprise and they hear thunder for the first time or loud noises are very prone to, having a negative association with that,
Correct.
and
True. True.
they would benefit with some like the introduction in a structured way. So I
Right.
would suggest
Yeah.
that, yes.
Correct. So Himani, if you can reach out to Shivani, I think she would need slightly more details in terms of what's the breed of your dog, what's the age of your dog, how
Yeah.
he's been responding to the various situations. And once she has a clear understanding on that, I think then she'd be able to give you better pointers on how to tackle it. So I would suggest you reach out to her directly on her Instagram handle or Facebook page. Coming on to the next question, which is by Anand. He's asking, I keep changing my place all day. He settles next to me. I shift. Then he just gets irritated and relaxes. Maybe thinks I have issues in life. So I think it's more of like a pointer that he wants to share, not more of like a question. So I'll just move on to the next question, which is by Smriti. She's asking, owing to lockdown, many dogs would have
Mhm.
gotten used to having their owners around all the time. What would your advice be to deal with the situation when the owners start going back to work again? So again, I
Yes,
think this we've covered, but
yes,
briefly again, if
yes,
you want to,
yes.
explain some pointers on it.
Hi, Smriti. How are you? Okay, so Smriti is a really close friend of mine.
All
Yes,
right,
Smriti. We've covered a lot of that. Once our lifestyle goes back to normal, and that's when the dog, he can't see us at all times, and that
right,
they're completely thrown off their schedule, and it's important to start introducing them to their regular routine that they would be maintaining once we go back, so that they're not taken by surprise. And if it includes crate training them, do
right,
that. Or if the dog is already crate trained, then put that following their routine as it was before the lockdown happened. And if we are
correct,
home, doesn't matter. They should be in the crate at that point, and
correct,
do it intermittently. Don't let them anticipate certain things like, okay, this is the only time I have to be in the crate. So form a routine and structure, and then the dog will automatically be comfortable once you have to step out.
correct, correct. All right. So that was the answer to your question, Smriti. Now moving on to, I think, our last and final question by Kashi. He's asking, I find it sometimes annoying when my Cooper starts barking at rats and lizards and squirrel from his crate. It may be his genetics or breed characteristics. How do I solve this issue?
Hi, Kashi. Okay, so yes, that could be like a problem. Definitely, the dog is not relaxing. That means in the crate. I would suggest probably get him an IATA crate if that helps, so that it is more enclosed and the dog learns how to be calmer,
Right,
faster. And if it's a wired crate, a lot of times the dog can see what's happening outside, and all the
true,
movement sort of triggers them and irritates them. So
true,
the one possibility could be like putting a cloth or something around the crate so that the dog can
right,
be, or putting the dog in a room where you don't usually have like these sites, interesting sites of
right,
squirrels and stuff like that. So
right,
that also might be helpful. Yes.
correct, correct. So I think. Uh, there's one more question that we'll just quickly cover by Sheetal. She's asking, hi, my dog is more attached to my helper. We have a big house and he's always with the helper. Though I give my dog bath, food, brushing, but he's always longing to meet his helper and not me or anyone in the family. So if you could just, share a few pointers around that too.
Okay. So what would you want the dog to do? Follow you around and not the helper, I'm guessing, right? Like,
Yeah, I think she wants herself or probably someone in the house, someone else in the family to be the main handler instead of the helper. So if you could just share a few pointers on how to work on engaging and forming
yes.
a more positive
Yeah.
bond to ensure that she becomes or someone else in the
Hmm.
family besides the helper becomes the main handler with whom the
Yes.
dog is more bonded or attached that way.
Yes, absolutely. So, Sheetal, I would suggest you probably, if you want, you can get in touch with somebody who can help you form that engagement with your dog, because that's very important. The engagement is basically the dog wants to be with you and wants what you have. So, if you're talking
Right,
about giving the dog a bath or food or brushing, that's like, okay, these are things that we would do anyway for the dog, because those are
right,
required things.
right.
Apart from that, it's also important to form that bond with the dog, where where you do a lot of value addition in yourself. A lot of times
Right,
I come across where the dog is very happy with the owners, but he'll be equally happy to leave the owner behind for another person. So that
right,
means you haven't really worked on your value addition. So if it's like, I think training the dog really helps. It sort of builds up your communication. The dog looks at you as a person who always has all the right resources that the dog needs. So well, I will be training with food that the dog needs. I will be training with the petting, or I would be training with the toys, whatever it is, the motivation of the dog.
right,
I am the source
right,
of everything. So once you
right.
add that value addition in yourself, that's when the dog's perspective also starts changing a lot.
Correct, correct, correct. All right. So that was your answer to, I mean, answer to your question, Sheetal. And again, if you have any further queries or you need in-depth help, you can reach out to Shivani. Again, this is going to be our final and last question. So the question is, my dog follows me everywhere, even to the bathroom. Why is she so clingy? So I think again, more or less, we've just covered it. But again, if just very quickly, if you could just give 2 3 pointers on the same.
Polo, you need to create your dog. That's all I will say. You
All
form
right,
like okay, form that structure to the routine that we've been talking about, and especially when you're going and doing your chores, everyday chores, like whether it's cooking or going for your bath, etc. When you cannot engage with the dog, it's very important for the dog to have you should let him like let the dog be, and even if it's like being in the crate by himself, he should be comfortable doing that, so that
right.
that falling around is stopped. Yes.
Right. All right. So yes, we've covered all the questions for today, Shivani. And for everyone who would still need any sort of guidance or help in terms of your dog's obedience or behavior or with crate training, separation anxiety, or any of your dogs related any issue, you can always reach out to Shivani. I am also sharing her handle's name, so you can search over Facebook and Instagram by Walker Canine by Shivani Singh, and over there she would be having your contact details and everything. You can directly reach out to her. And once again, because in order to suggest anyone on what sort of structure they need to follow, it is always advisable for the trainer should know everything: the dog's background, the dog's age, again the dog's general habits, what sort of lifestyle the dog is in, how much time you
Yes.
can devote to the dog. So then only
Yes.
we can always, on such platforms, on live sessions, we can always just give brief pointers. But for in-depth knowledge and for proper assistance and guidance and help, it's best to reach out to the trainer directly. So you can just always reach out to her on her Facebook and Instagram page. And you can also reach out to Petarchy. Like, you can visit the website petarchy.com if at all you want any sort of customized dog beds or crates or kennels or any sort of crate related or customized pet furniture sort of thing. And even I have a range entire, just very I don't have a wide range of products, but I am focusing more on products that are of use to the dog. So for example, that would again help in some way or the other in let's say, I won't say cure separation anxiety, but to help maintain it a bit. So, for example, when the dog is in the crate, instead of the dog just being idle, you can toss them some mental stimulation toys with which
Yes.
they're just
Yes.
engaged and using their brain. So that will
Yes.
also help them a lot. So there are a lot of
Definitely.
training-based, dog products also available on the website. So you can always reach out to me either through the website, or again, my page name is Petarchy. So over Facebook and Instagram, you can always reach out there. So for any assistance in terms of crate training, separation anxiety, or any of your training behaviors, you can reach out to either of us, and we'd be more than happy to help you. I hope you guys liked today's session and it was informative and we could do justice to the topic. And thank you everyone for joining in, and especially thanks to Shivani. Shivani, before we sign out, can we just quickly meet both of your dogs?
Oh, of course, yes. I'll have to go get them out of the room.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
just, if you just quickly do that, we'll just
Okay. Give
go
me
there.
1 second. Yeah.
Sure, sure, no problem, no problem. So, for everyone who also joined late for the session, and in case you had missed out something and you would want to, go through a specific topic, you can just, tune in. I mean, visit DogSpot's page, and over there we would be also having recorded, a version of the live chat. So you can just go through them and could just go through the entire session as well too, if at all you've missed any pointers. And in general, we have a lot of, we've been doing, I think, crossed over 100 plus live sessions. So they're on different dog related and animal related topics. So you can just go through all the recorded series as well. So it's really informative.
Yeah,
So
these are my
those are
doggies.
so cute.
Hi. Come
How
here.
old are they?
Jabba. So Jabba is come on, Jabba. My earplug. Hey, that's my earplug. Come here, come here. Electra is gonna be 5. Jabba is gonna be 3.
All right.
That's Jabba. That's Electra. Come here. Come here. Come here. Good.
Wow,
Yeah.
big
So
dogs.
they've been they've been locked up in the room for a while now. They're excited to be out. Good puppies.
Right.
Good puppies. Good. Good. Good.
Nice. Right. I think you're also preparing your Mali for some advanced work as well, if I'm not wrong.
Uh, yes, that's
Advanced
our
training as
training
well.
goal. Yes, that's a
All
training
right.
goal to prepare for PSA.
Oh
Hopefully,
wow.
we'll be
All
able to
right.
do that.
Nice.
Yes,
All right. All right. So thank you everyone for tuning in for today's live session. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please go on to DogSpot's Facebook page and just like and share the recorded version of the session. And it was great having you, Shivani, today on board with us. And for
it
all
was
the viewers,
lovely.
also you can just follow DogSpot's page and Shivani's handle for all the training related queries, Petarki's page for all the products related queries. So it's more of like an informative sort of a platform that you can always tune into, and you can keep getting updates, be it related to dogs training or in general any sort of probably training tool and stuff. So, and you can also follow DogSpot's page to stay tuned with all of the important topics that we'd be getting a lot of more professionals and talk about various other behavior and in general dogs related topics. So it's going to be, I think, a great platform to learn a lot, especially if you're a dog owner and you want to know more. So thank you everyone. Thanks a lot once again. Thank you, Shivani. Have a
It was
good day.
lovely being here. You
Same
too.
here. Same
Thank
here.
you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.